Hello everybody, it's Jansaurus here. Here we like to focus on budget Magic the Gathering, and today I'm bringing you a Toxrill the Corrosive budget commander deck. So Toxrill the Corrosive is a 5 black slug horror creature. At the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them, and whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. And you can pay blue and a black, sacrifice a slug to draw a card. So Toxrill is a very powerful commander. It does a lot for you. Obviously it is an in-game commander, and not only does it provide you with a creature factory, it also slowly whittles down your opponent's creatures, and it provides card draw. It does a lot for your deck, honestly, if you can get to it. So I'm going to be straight honest with you guys. This is a Proliferation deck that focuses on the Infect mechanic. Proliferation, I feel like, is the easiest way to get the most out of Toxrill's slime counters. And the Infect mechanic gives us an early game plan while we get our Toxrill on board. So we have 2.5 win conditions for this deck. We have just the general advantage that Toxrill gives, and then we have the poison counters, and then we also have a card called Strixhaven Stadium in there. And once you get 10 counters on Strixhaven Stadium, you can choose a player to lose the game. So our Proliferation is hitting our opponent's poison counters, Toxrill slime counters, and Strixhaven counters to target an opponent to lose the game. So we have roughly like 2.5 win conditions just right there in our counter strategy. And I know that a lot of people are not a fan of the Infect mechanic, so talk with your play group, see if it is okay before you run this deck, or just break it out and surprise them. Some people, like I said, are not a fan, so they might be a little bit salty of this style of deck. I'm personally up to interpretation. Sometimes if it is a very concise and powerful Infect mechanic, I feel like that deck can be a little bit unfun to play against, but I really don't feel like this one is trying to cheat out a huge Infect creature. It's not trying to end the game with some sort of crazy combo. It's just trying to slowly progress through the game, and I feel like that is a more fair and more fun way to build a Infect deck. But enough rambling, let's get on to the cards you actually want to see. So we're going to start out by ramping up. We have Burnished Heart. You can pay 3, sacrifice Burnished Heart, search your library for up to 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Next up we have a kind of a unique style of ramp, and that is Dream Devourer. Each non-land card in your hand without Foretell has Foretell. Its Foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. And whenever you foretell a card, Dream Devourer gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Obviously, this just lets you play cards for cheaper at a later time by foretelling them. More likely, you're probably not going to attack with Dream Devourer. He's just there to provide you ramp, but it is an option. Next up is Forsworn Paladin. Has Menace, and you can pay 1 and a black and tap it to, and also pay 1 life. Create a treasure token. You can also pay 2 and a black. Target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. If mana from a treasure was spent to activate this ability, that creature also gains Death Touch until end of turn. So not only can you obviously tap and pay 1 life to get a treasure token to help you ramp for the next turn, you can also use that treasure token in an in a defensive or offensive way and make a really unfair trade with your opponent by giving a creature death touch. Next up we have Plague Mirror. Plague Mirror has Infect, and it also has tap and add 1 to your mana pool. More than likely, Plague Mirror is just going to sit there and be a mana rock, but you can get an early poison counter on an opponent if they do not have a defender. Like I said, mostly you're just going to use it for the little bit of ramp, but if someone's taking a little bit to get off the ground, an early poison counter can make the world of difference. Next up we have Skullport Merchant. When Skullport Merchant enters the battlefield, create a treasure token, and then you can pay 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature or a treasure to draw a card. Next up we have Commander Sphere. Tap adds 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity, and then you can sacrifice it to draw a card. Both Skullport Merchant and Commander Sphere gives you a little bit of ramp, and then can give you an option for a card draw if you really need it. Next up is Charcoal Diamond. Charcoal Diamond enters the battlefield tapped. Tap it and add a black. Sky Diamond is the same, except it taps and adds a blue. We're still ramping because we have our commander is a 7-cost commander, so it's going to take us a little bit to get there. Next up we have Dimir Cluestone. You can tap to add blue or black to your mana pool, and you can pay blue and a black and tap it to sacrifice Dimir Cluestone to draw a card. Dimir Locket. You can pay Dimir, sacrifice Dimir Locket, draw 2 cards, and you can also tap it for blue and a black. And then we have Midnight Clock, probably my favorite mana artifact ever at this point. I just absolutely love this card. You can pay 2 and a blue, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, draw 7 cards, exile Midnight Clock, and you can also tap it to add a blue. I absolutely love this card. Getting a fresh 7 cards in your hand is absolutely a game changer. It can really get you back into the game. If you're a little bit behind, it can put you even further ahead, because more likely the 7 fresh cards in your hand are going to be worth whatever you just put back into your deck. Usually 9 times out of 10, this is a benefit to you. And then last up is Strixhaven Stadium. This is one of our win conditions. You can tap it to add a colorless mana. Put a point counter on Strixhaven Stadium. Whenever a creature deals damage to you, remove a point counter from Strixhaven Stadium. And whenever a creature you control deals damage to an opponent, put a point counter on Strixhaven Stadium. Then if it has 10 or more point counters on it, remove them all, and that player loses the game. Like I said, this is one of our win conditions with a proliferate mechanic. We can probably get a good amount of counters on this for absolutely free, and all we need to do is just tap it to add more our first point counter on it. So it's very easy to get up on a roll, and in this deck it just provides another threat to your opponents that's not quite hard to deal with, but it's more annoying to deal with than just your poison counters. Going into card draw, we have Morbid Opportunist. Whenever 1 or more other creatures die, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Village Rites, as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. Deep Fathom Skulker. This is our reoccurring card draw engine. It has Devoid. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, and you can pay 2 or 3 and a colorless. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. We do not have a whole lot of colorless ways to get mana. So Strixhaven Stadium, one of our win conditions, actually gives colorless mana, so that can be very handy for Deep Fathom Skulker. But we do have a few other ways to get around creatures being blocked. So we will draw cards off of this, it's just a matter of getting to it. Next up, we have Opt, scry 1 and draw a card. Alright, now for the Infect. First up, we have Blighted Agent. Has Infect, and Blighted Agent is unblockable. It is a 1/1, but just like I said, getting one poison counter to start things off is huge for us to actually start getting the ball rolling. Next up, we have Core Prowler. It has Infect, and when Core Prowler is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, Proliferate. So this does both of our main mechanics in one card, which is obviously very awesome. Next up, we have Corpse Cur. It has Infect, and when Corpse Cur enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card with Infect from your graveyard to your hand. This just gives us a little bit recursion and a little bit more survivability throughout the game. Next up, we have Icor Rat, has Infect, and when Icor Rat enters the battlefield, each player gets a poison counter. This card is amazing. It literally just gets the ball rolling on every opponent, and normally getting a poison counter on you is not the end of the world, because more than likely we are the only person playing Infect, and we can also choose which players get a counter with Proliferate, so our counters are we're not in danger of actually getting killed by our own poison counters with due to Proliferation. Next up, we have Reaper of Sholarid. Has Infect, and whenever a source deals damage to Reaper, that source controllers gets a poison counter. Next up, we also have Viral Drake. Has Flying Infect to get a little bit of evasiveness around your opponents, and it also has pay 3 and a blue to Proliferate. Again, another creature that has both of our main mechanics. Absolutely amazing, especially in this deck. Next up, we have Whispering Spectre. 1 black with Flying Infect, and whenever Whispering Spectre deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. If you do, that player discards a card for each poison counter he or she has. So this is just a very good card for Infect. Obviously, making your opponent discard 2-3 cards is amazing, but as soon as you get to the point where they're discarding their entire hand, this becomes very much worth it. And then we have Decimator Web. It's an artifact, and you can pay 4 and tap it. Target opponent loses 2 life, gets a poison counter, then puts the top 6 cards of his or her graveyard library into his or her graveyard. This is just a targeted lose 2 life, get a poison counter, and then they have to mill themselves. So mostly this is here for the poison counter, but the other 2 can come into play depending on what the board state is. But like I said, it's mostly here just to point and click poison counter. Alright, Caress of Phyrexia. Sorcery, target player draws 3 cards, loses 3 life, and gets 3 poison counters. This is amazing. It is a very high costed draw spell, but it is 1/3 of your way to killing someone with a 3 poison counters. If you really need the card draw, you can use it that way too, and it just gives you a lot of different, a few different options. It's a point and click, you're almost dead due to poison counters, and it's also an emergency draw card if you really need it. Next up is Tainted Strike. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains Infect until end of turn. You can put this on one of your opponent's creatures who happens to be attacking someone else, and you can potentially take someone out of the game who wasn't even expecting it. Just with this card, excellent card. Honestly, would be great to have in any black deck in general. Next up, we have Virulent Wound. Put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. When that creature is put into the graveyard this turn, its controller gets a poison counter. Obviously, you want to hit this with something that's about to die, or something that's a whatever 1. Just so, obviously it dies, and then it's just a free poison counter for 1 black mana. And then Relic Putress. I know I butchered that, that's fine. Enchant artifact. Whenever enchanted artifact becomes tapped, its controller gets a poison counter. This really would make people second guess from actually using, I don't even want to necessarily say put this on a mana rock, but they are going to be willing to do that in most cases, is tap their mana rock. But putting this on a key utility artifact that someone has would be a very great way, just because, like, if that is their if that artifact gives them so much utility, to them it will be worth getting that poison counter for the most part, and it can really hesitate opponents from really outramping you with mana artifacts or something like that. So this is gives you a little bit of a variety for the card, and like I said, artifacts is one of the most common cards played in Commander, so I feel like this is a great not utensil, but this is a great tool in our kit to get additional poison counters on people. And just shutting out, like I said, certain mana rocks, like putting this on a soulstone, people are still probably going to be willing to take a poison counter to get that 2 mana. Putting this on a basalt monolith, or something that taps for multiple mana, will probably still be worth it to your opponents. So like I said, just putting it on something like that gets them closer and closer and closer till you can just proliferate them out of the game. And next up, we have our Proliferate mechanic. So first up, we have Flux Channeler. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Proliferate. Guide Pact Informant has flying, and whenever Guide Pact Informant deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, Proliferate. Normally there's one player at the table who does not have reach, and who does also not have a whole lot of flyers. Obviously you smack them with Guild Pact Informant to proliferate, so you get closer to winning. Thrumming Bird. Whenever Thrumming Bird deals combat damage to a player, Proliferate, literally the exact same card, except cheaper than Guild Pact Informant. And then we have Contagion Clasp. When Contagion Clasp enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and you can pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. So this can be a little key removal spell on a mana dork or a utility creature, and it can also obviously not prolong your game plan, but facilitate your game plan, get you that much closer to winning. Contentious Plan. First off, you proliferate and then you draw a card. Just gives you, not only, it's the same as Tesserat's Gambit. Not only does it also make it so you're closer to winning, it also replaces itself, and it's just really good value for just that. Spread the Sickness. Destroy target creature, then proliferate. So this is a great card, especially if we have our commander out, because not only will it kill one creature who might be too big for your slime counters to matter, more or less, but it will then proliferate, possibly killing a lot more creatures. And then it also, if that original creature had a slime counter on it, you get a card draw off of, or you get a slug token off of this, and then the proliferation might get you even more slug tokens. It's just a really good card for this specific deck. Tezzeret's Gambit, like I said, draw 2 cards, then proliferate. Just a really great card draw effect in this deck, and it's also another proliferate. Karn's Bastion is a really helpful land to have in this deck. It taps, adds a colorless that matters for Deep Fathom Skulker, and then it also has proliferate, pay 4 and tap. It's just a really, really key card in this deck, and sometimes having this in your opening hand is almost worth keeping it just based off of that. Alright, we have Fuel for the Cause, a very expensive counter spell, but you counter any spell, doesn't matter if creature, instant, sorcery, and then you proliferate. So it's pretty good in this deck. I would not run this in any other deck that's not focused on counters, obviously. Grim Affliction, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, then proliferate. This is pretty much putting 2 -1/-1 counters, or just putting -2/-2 on a creature. It's honestly pretty good removal. A lot of key utility creatures have 1 or 2 toughness, and this is can be pretty valuable. And you can also put this at the end of a combat phase or before the damage step, and save one of your creatures and make your opponent lose something that's very valuable. Next up, we have Steady Progress. Number 1, it proliferates, and number 2, it draws a card. Like I said, a really good card for this deck. And then probably our best card in this entire deck, Inexorable Tide. For 3 blue, whenever you cast a spell, proliferate. This can get out of hand very, very quickly. We do have quite a few low-cost spells, and being able to proliferate 2 to 3 times in a turn can really get you either the win or get you really close to winning the game just off of this card. Probably our best card. There is another card I would like to talk about later that is arguably just as important or more important, but this, for the proliferation side of things, is our best card by far. We're going to need a little bit of protection for our Toxrill. When we do get him out, people are going to want to kill him right away. He just provides that much for you. So first up, we have Giant's Amulet. When Giant's Amulet enters the battlefield, you may pay 3 and a blue. If you do, create a 4/4 blue Giant Wizard creature token, then attach Giant Amulet to it. Equipped creature gets +0/+1, and this creature has hexproof as long as it's untapped. And it has equip 2. It can provide a body, but mostly it's here just for the hexproof. Curator's Ward, enchant permanent. Enchanted permanent has hexproof. When enchanted permanent leaves the battlefield, if it was historic, draw 2 cards. So this can protect a key artifact if you really, really want. It can really protect anything you want, but putting it on a artifact, or more importantly Toxrill, when it does die, gives you a little bit of recursion or card advantage by drawing 2 cards to replace itself and whatever it was protecting. So all in all, a really great card to have, but also like I said, it's mostly here just to slap it on Toxrill and make him harder to deal with. Next up, we have Mirror Shield. Equipped creature gets +0/+2 and has hexproof, and whenever a creature with death touch blocks or becomes blocked by this creature, destroy that creature. And it equipped too. Like I said, just is mostly here for the hexproof ability, but the added benefit of not really having to worry about him dying due to combat with a death touch creature is just a little bit added benefit to him. It really doesn't come up a whole lot, but it is nice to know that you can attack without really having to worry about it. And then Ring of Zithrid, pay 2, regenerate equipped creature, and at the beginning of your upkeep put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature if it is black. You do have to keep up at least 2 mana. It discourages people from using their removal on Toxrill. If you do not have it, then this ring really does nothing. But one added benefit in this deck in particular is those +1/+1 counters can really add up on Toxrill with our proliferation mechanics that we have going on. Like I said, just always keep 2 mana open. It can really dissuade people from killing your Toxrill, knowing that you can just pay 2 and keep it alive. That being said, there are people who will have multiple removal spells or multiple removal spells among multiple players. So just be a little bit wary of that. Sometimes you might need more than just 2 open mana to keep them safe. Tyrite Sanctum. So Tyrite Sanctum is a very slow way of protection, but it is a very effective one. Number 1 is a land. You can tap, add a colorless. Again, another colorless way to get mana for Deep Fathom Skulker. And 2 and tap, target legendary creature becomes a god in addition to its other types, and put a +1/+1 counter on it. Again, proliferation makes that second part quite a bit better. And then it also has pay 4, tap, sacrifice Tyrite Sanctum, put a indestructible counter on target god. Okay, so obviously, if we're going for the long con and the indestructible part, you'd want to pay 2, tap, target creature becomes a god. Obviously, we'll choose Toxrill, and then pay 4, tap and sack, and then Tyrite Sanctum makes Toxrill indestructible, and then you slap a hexproof artifact on him, and then he's just honestly extremely difficult because you can't kill him through combat damage. You have to do either -1/-1 counters, or you have to do exile effects, but you can't target him. So it just would make him absolutely insane to deal with. And same with Gift of Doom, which is enchant creature. Enchanted creature has death touch and indestructible, and the morph cost for this would be sacrifice another creature. And as Gift of Doom is turned face up, you may attach it to a creature. So obviously what you'd want to do is pay 3, sacrifice a creature, attach this to Toxrill, and then you really don't have to worry about anything else except for exile effects for the rest of the game with your Toxrill. And again, like I said with Tyrite Sanctum, slapping a hexproof on that just makes him extremely difficult to deal with. There are a few ways, like a Mass Edict effect where you just sacrifice something could deal with him, or like a Mass Exile effect like Extinction Event could deal with him still, but it just makes him so much more difficult to deal with than normally. Alright. Problem with Infect is late game they don't have a whole lot of attack power, so how do you get them through some big booty defenses? So we're going to make them unblockable and at least sneak in 1 or 2 poison counters before they're dealt with. So Whisper Silk Cloak, equipped creature is unblockable, and equipped creature has Shroud, another way to possibly protect your Toxrill. But it is also very handy to slap this on an Infect mechanic or a Proliferate creature and make them unblockable. Distortion Strike, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn and is unblockable this turn, and it also has Rebound. If you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. So 2 turns of a creature becoming unblockable can really obviously win you the game. It could get you 2 Proliferation triggers, a poison counter, or a poison counter and a Proliferation. There's just so many different ways, or just straight up just commander damage. Because remember, 3 attacks with Toxrill will win you the game by himself. And then we have Slip Through Space. Target creature can't be blocked this turn, draw a card. It does have Devoid, but that comes up almost never, honestly. And then we have Rogue's Passage. It taps, adds a colorless, another way to get colorless, again for Deep Fathom Skulker. And then we also have Pay 4, tap, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Like I said, just a really handy effect to have in an Infect deck or a Proliferation deck, honestly. Just a real nice key utility land. And we have a few other utility cards. So first up we have Gissa, Glorious Resurrector. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. At the beginning of your upkeep, put all creature cards exiled with Gissa, Glorious Resurrector on the battlefield under your control. They gain Decay. Gissa is a very powerful card. I feel like it is a much more fair version of Tergrid, and Gissa works in a more broad sense, where they don't have to sacrifice it or discard the card, you just get it if the creature dies. Nadir's Nightblade. Whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. There are a few other tokens. We have a few ways to make treasure tokens. We have a few cards like the next one, Ogre Slumlord, who creates creature tokens. And Toxrill is also a creature token factory when he gets established. Ogre Slumlord, 3 black. Whenever another non-token creature dies, you may create a 1/1 black rat creature token, and rats you have Death Touch. Again, creature token factory really prevents anyone from really attacking you with how many 1/1 black rats you can have, especially since they have Death Touch and can take out most creatures very easily. And then we have Reassembling Skeleton. You can pay 1 and a black, return Reassembling Skeleton from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And Reassembling Skeleton is just a very nice sacrifice creature, just for a few of our cards that lean towards that direction. And worst case scenario, he makes a really good defender, as long as your opponent doesn't have trample. Alright, next up we have is Sludge Monster. Whenever Sludge Monster enters the battlefield or attacks, put a slime counter on up to 1 other target creature. Non-horror creatures with slime counters on them lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 2/2. This is an amazing card with Toxrill. This should be in every Toxrill deck. This card is by far the best card in this deck, besides maybe Inexorbital Tide. Those 2 are probably the best cards in this entire deck, because the way Sludge Monster reads is Sludge Monster and Toxrill are the only 2 creatures that provide slime counters up to this point. And if you play a Toxrill and you have multiple slime counters on each creature, you can play Sludge Monster. Every non-horror creature instantly loses all abilities, becomes a base power toughness 2/2, and you can put an additional slime counter on a target creature to be a removal effect at this point, because each one of those slime counters are also a -1/-1. It is just a very powerful card. It gives you so much versatility if you have your Toxrill out, or if you have this out and then play your Toxrill. It just does a lot for you. Imagine taking out a Blightsteel Colossus because it has 2 slime counter tokens on it. It just gives you a lot of value, a lot of bang for your buck. The only thing I would watch out for is maybe some Eldrazi horrors are a good one to look out for. That's a pretty commonly played horror type. There's a few mill effects or mill creatures that have the horror type. Just be aware that this doesn't work for all creatures. Curse of the Swine, X, blue, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller creates a 2/2 green board creature token. Just a mass removal spell, just absolutely awesome to have. Raven form, exile target artifact or creature. Its controller gets a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying, and you can foretell it for the price of blue. Like I said, same with Curse of Swine. It's just a very efficient and a very fun way to exile a very problematic creature. Next up, we have Corrupted Resolve. Counter target spell if its controller is poisoned. Just a very efficient mana or counter spell in this deck, and like I said, we have enough poison counters to float around to where this shouldn't be a hard card to get off the ground. Next up, we have Disdainful Stroke. Counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. Just like I said, a very good counter spell. Heartless Act. Choose one, destroy target creature with no counters on it. Remove up to 3 counters from target creature. This is mostly here just in case if there is a creature you want to remove early on in the game, or if a creature that doesn't have a slime counter on it, obviously. Next up, we have a Murder, to just plain old destroy target creature. And then next up, we have Negate, counter target non-creature spell. Just like I said, a very great counter spell. Next up, we have Grave Betrayal, 5 black. Enchantment: whenever a creature you don't control dies, return it to the battlefield under your control with an additional +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. That creature is also a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. Okay, so again, it has the little added benefit of actually giving your creatures, or your new creatures, +1/+1 counters on it. That goes great with the Proliferation mechanic, and it also is just a very great way to get added benefit from your slime counters, from your removal spells, from your opponent's combat steps. It just gives you so much to do benefit for having this on the field. Legacy's Allure. So this is an enchantment. During your upkeep, you may put a treasure counter on Legacy's Allure. Sacrifice Legacy's Allure. Permanently gain control of target creature with power no greater than the number of treasure counters on Legacy's Allure. If you get this down early game, you can steal whatever creature you want almost at any point with how much we have of our Proliferation mechanic. Honestly, looks very underwhelming at first, but with Proliferation, it makes it a pretty good threat to have on board, and you can sacrifice it at any point. So if someone plays a very key combo creature, you can easily steal that. If someone plays technically, if someone plays their commander, you can just steal that right away, and then you don't even have to deal with their commander for potentially the rest of the game. It just gives you a little bit more added utility, and like I said, you can use it offensively or defensively too. Slaughter Specialist works amazingly in this deck. When Slaughter Specialist enters the battlefield, each opponent creates a 1/1 white human creature token. This instantly dies when Toxrill comes on the field. Okay, not necessarily. You have to wait till the end step, but still. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Slaughter Specialist. This doesn't have to be because of anything you did. This could also be because your opponent played a removal spell or attacked into a player who had a decent defensive state. Like, there are so many ways to grow Slaughter Specialist, and again, Proliferation makes this card even better. Honestly, a really great card to have in this deck. Next up, we have Woe Strider. When Woe Strider enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 white goat token and sacrifice another creature to scry 1, and it also has Escape. For 3 black, exile 4 other creature cards from your graveyard. When Woe Strider escapes, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Holy cow. Okay. So number 1, it just gives you a little bit more, not necessarily card advantage, but it is card selection, which is not quite as good, but really close. And then it also has +1/+1 counters for the Proliferation mechanic, making that better. And honestly, if someone points at a creature that you can't quite protect, or someone points at a creature that is going to die due to combat or something like that, due to a combat trick, at least you get some advantage off of it instead of nothing with Woe Strider. It's just a very good utility creature to have in your black decks. And then Diabolic Tutor. Search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's a tutor effect. It's really, really good. It is a little bit expensive, but if you do really want to get that protection piece for Toxrill, if you really want to get Inexorable Tide, or if you really want to get Sludge Monster, this is a very great way to ensure that you'll at least see it, since those are, like I said, the 2 best cards that we have in our deck. Alright, let's talk about value. So according to TCG Player, this deck without shipping is $55.79. I think that's an amazing deal, especially since Toxrill is one of the most expensive cards from Crimson Vow, with a $15 price tag. So you are paying $15 for Toxrill and about $40 for the 99, which is a very great deal if you ask me. And then Card Kingdom has $67.27 for the price tag of it, and that is with shipping. It's with everything. Honestly, they do a really good job. And like I said, I think Toxrill might be like a $16 card on that website. So even with the $16 price tag on Toxrill, the rest of the deck is $50, pretty much even, which again, I think is a very great budget way to build this deck. And in my opinion, it is a very fun way to build this deck for you. Maybe not your opponents, but we'll get there. So the average Toxrill deck is $1,059.86 according to Card Kingdom. That is, so we are, 1/20th of the price if we go with our TCG Player, or probably maybe 1/18th. Just doing some quick mental math of the price using Card Kingdom cost to Card Kingdom cost. That is honestly very impressive in my opinion. Just the fact that we can put up a very competitive deck for pocket change compared to the average Toxrill deck is very, very I'm very proud of that fact, is what I'm trying to say. I feel like I made a very comprehensive, a very focused deck that does that wins through a variety of ways, is what I'm trying to say. Toxrill is a very fun commander. He is a big win condition in your command zone, and people really do respect him. Alright, we'll go on to the lore. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of lore on Toxrill. So the Temple of Toxrill heard that their rival cult, the spawn of Grolnok, summoned their god avatar. Grolnok is the Simic commander that came out with Crimson Vow, the toad that lets you mill yourself every time a frog attacks. So the Temple of Toxrill summoned Toxrill via an ancient ritual and a little bit of enlarging magic on a slug engorged on demon blood. So this formed Toxrill as we know him, and Toxrill immediately multiplied rapidly and ate half of the cult that was present. Just immediately wiped out half the cult. And now the surviving members of the cult are waiting for their big creature to fight the spawn of Grolnok, god avatar, and they're just waiting for that big climactic battle. That's all the lore there is. Honestly, it's kind of a little bit humorous that Toxrill killed half of his followers just like that, and it's also very funny that that they actually used a little bit of enlargement magic on Toxrill to make him even that scary, much scarier. It would be interesting to see how these two fight. My money, honestly, just based on the cards, would be on Toxrill. But obviously Grolnok is no pushover either. I just love how these two cults really wanted to summon their gods, and then they did. It's just a really kind of little fun little lore tidbit that's happening on the side of Crimson Vow. Okay, so like I said, guys, I'm pretty proud of this deck for 1/20th of the cost and of a average Toxrill deck, and Toxrill being such an expensive commander. I feel like doing $55 without shipping is an amazing price, and even $67 for shipping from Card Kingdom, and it coming in just one pouch would also be a very great deal for you guys. Thank you so much for watching me ramble and getting through this. I had a lot of fun building this deck. Toxrill can be built in a variety of different ways. I just chose Infect just due to the proliferation mechanic, making Infect, Toxrill, Strixhaven Stadium, and a few of our other cards just that much better. And it's a very fun way to play Magic is the proliferation mechanic. I really do enjoy that mechanic just because of its versatility, and that's why Atraxa is such a great commander, is just because it has Proliferate at the very end of its text box. But enough about Atraxa. I'm really glad that you guys stayed and watched this. It really means a lot to me. A like, comment, or subscribe would definitely mean a lot to me. But only do that if you enjoy the content. I do try to do bi-weekly uploads as of right now. Just the holidays and working in the medical field takes up a lot of my time, honestly. But again, thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you so much for watching my videos. I appreciate everything that you do. And I will see you guys next time.